welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Welcome, Brewer fans, back to another Brew Crew Review Podcast. Got Scott with me tonight, and Vince will be chiming in here any moment. We're going to talk about the Brewers last week of games, and also they just kicked off the home stand here against the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll be talking about a big night from Christian Yelich. So let's before we get started, let's recap. Last week the Brewers went 2-4. They did win the series against the Dodgers in LA, but also in LA against the Angels. They got swept earlier in the week, so not an ideal week. I know none of us predicted that. I think Vince had us going 4-2, and we both said 3-3, Scott. So we missed the mark a little bit, but I really did not.
I'm back.
Hey, Vince. We just started here.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so we're basically talking about the Brewers the week of they went 2-4 on the week. I guess what are your guys' thoughts, Scott? Maybe I'll start off on the Brewers' last road trip here, basically just in LA.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't look super great against the Angels. I mean, we were kind of behind pretty much just about the entire time. I mean, we never even used Hader, I don't think. So it wasn't a particularly good time. And not only that, but you figure that, almost 2 full games of that was without Mike Trout, and we were still getting kind of beat up a little bit. But we did bounce back and take 2 of 3 from the Dodgers, so that's definitely a good thing since they're in the NL. And obviously we have an axe to grind with them. Obviously that series was a little bit more important. If you're going to take 2 or 3 from one of them, it better be the Dodgers. So overall, I mean, 2-4, you can't really be happy with it, but it's a West Coast trip and it's 2 very good teams. So you tip your cap and move on, and we bounce back tonight.
Yeah, good assessment there, Scotty. The Angels series was pretty frustrating, to be honest. The pitching definitely did not hold up. A very frustrating series. I think the American League has been a problem for the Brewers in years past as well. But, 2 or 3 from the Dodgers was good. We looked a little anemic on Sunday. It's been kind of up and down. I think the pitching is a bit of a concern at this point. I know that we've been decimated by some injuries in the bullpen between Javier Wall and Jeremy Jeffers and Corey Knebel. So, remains to be seen how we're going to manage to come back from those injuries. I know that Jeremy Jeffers is scheduled to be activated from the disabled list, I think, tomorrow as of this taping. So hopefully that solves the issue. Starting pitching is going to have to figure out how to be more consistent. We've seen Freddie Peralta have a great outing and 2 bad outings, and Corbin Burns has had an abnormally high home run rate that he's given up. Very, very atypical of him. But, I think it's just a matter of being more consistent. Nothing that we need to, worry about the season being lost over. But at the same time, a frustrating series in Anaheim. And, I think some of those problems still are showing in the Dodgers series as well.
Yeah, obviously it was a long week for the Brewers, but they're back kicking off homestand, and tonight against the Cardinals. They took the game 10-7. It was an awesome game. Christian Yelich hit 3 home runs, the most ever a Brewers hit in a game, of course, tying a bunch of folks. But, Josh Hader came in and closed out the game, and basically he's the most dominant and best closer, most dominant reliever and best closer in baseball. So, I mean, we've got last year's MVP and Josh Hader, and I think the Brewers really those 2 players really make the Brewers stand above the other teams that are getting against the division, like the Cardinals and the Cubs. And Scott was pointing out, his interns dug up this info about the so far in 5 games this year against St. Louis, Christian Yelich has had a home run in all 5 games, 3 of them tonight. That's 7 home runs in 5 games against the Cardinals this year. Unbelievable. I think that what we can talk about is, what the plan is for the entire season for our 3 young starters and Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burns, and Brandon Woodruff, because as we're seeing already, there's going to be some ups and downs in their professional development at the major league level, and at some point, some of them will probably have some innings caps, and so I think other pitchers, namely Jimmy Nelson or possibly an acquisition later in the year, are going to really be key factors in the Brewers reaching the postseason. But with that, I think that these 3 young pitchers we are going to ride for most of the year. And I think a lot of our postseason aspirations will rest on how they do. And I personally don't have a problem with that plan, and I don't have really any major concern with any of the 3 pitchers. But there is some worries there. So I guess, what are your guys' thoughts overall on those 3 pitchers?
I mean, I think that it's just a matter of being consistent, number one. But number two, my biggest concern isn't necessarily throwing those 3 guys in the rotation. It's throwing all 3 of them into the rotation, and then you take out some guys that were very key for our bullpen last year, with both Burns and Woodruff. So I think that we're seeing maybe guys having to adjust to new roles, but I also think that there's a bit of a hole in the bullpen when you take out a guy like Brandon Woodruff, again, who pitched so well for the Brewers in the bullpen in September and October of 2018, or when you take out Corbin Burns, who pitched lights out in the bullpen from July through the end of the year and through the playoffs. So I think that that's really where the issue comes in. I think that they're all talented enough to make a go of it in the rotation. But if you go back to some of our podcasts before the season started, I think that that all 3 of us and Chad all predicted that the guy that at least that 2 of the 3 guys might end up in the rotation, that we keep at least one in the bullpen. So with the injuries, I'm surprised we didn't go with that plan. But this is where we sit in April, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I guess right now anyway, I mean, like you said, they're obviously with all the subtractions from the bullpen. You look at guys that have really kind of stepped up a little bit. Junior Guerra has done a really good job so far working at the back end of that bullpen. And to a lesser extent, I guess Albers and Barnes have done a pretty good job so far. I didn't expect that. They're exceeding my expectations. Let's put it that way. But looking at the rotation, even Chassin hasn't really done much of anything yet either. I mean, Zach Davies is the only starter with an ERA under 6 right now. So yeah, it's been tough. The most alarming thing that I see right now is definitely the home run rate with Corbin Burns. He gave up 4, I think, all last year in 38 innings. And so far this year, he's already given up 9. That's incredible. So that's definitely got to change. That's what worries me most.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's an aberration against his minor league numbers too. So, I guess the question remains to be answered. What is this, indicative of? Is it just kind of a weird flip on his career, or is it something that, the Brewers need to be concerned about because guys are seeing him, a second or a third time through the order, where that wasn't the case in the bullpen or with lesser challenge and competition in the minor league?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I think that Burns' home run problems, I think that they will get figured out. I think he'll work through those. Freddie Peralta, he threw that gem of a game, and I think he really has that that in him if he can locate his fastball. And the times that he doesn't, he seems to really get burned, especially early in games. And that's not a good trait you want to have for a starting pitcher. Get burned early and put your team in a hole, and that's happened already. So there's really some ups and downs with him, and then of course Woodruff's been pretty solid. But again, like you're pointing out, Scott, everyone's got an area like over 6, and I think it's really a testament to our offense that we're in first place because we're pretty stacked up and down the order. I mean, yes, Monty Grandal has been hitting phenomenally as well, our big catcher acquisition. And then even Orlando Arcia has really been hitting much better than he did all of last year, and I really feel that he's capable of doing that throughout the whole season. And if that's going to be the case, I really think the Brewers offense can, deal with the pitching staff as long as our bullpen somehow gets solidified. And I think Jeremy Jeffers coming back should help do that. I think the loss of Corey Knebel for the whole season is a sting that we feel all year. And, I think maybe Stearns could address that at some point before the trading deadline by bringing someone else in. Because some of the guys that he has brought in, I'm just really not too super enthused about, like Jacob Trika. And I do like Alex Wilson, but I don't think he's necessarily a huge back end of the bullpen type guy. I'm not too trusting of Matt Albers anywhere in the bullpen either. But with that being said, Claudio also, he's supposed to be really good, but to me, he's only been mediocre so far, and he's walked a few guys when he really shouldn't have, in my opinion. But anyway, overall, I think the bullpen will be fine. But I think Jeremy Jeffers, the good version of Jeremy Jeffers from last year, needs to come back and really, fill that big void that I think is in the back of our bullpen right now.
Let me ask you this. If Jeffers comes back and he shows that he's just as dominant as he was last year, does he automatically reassume that closer role, and does Hader go back to that kind of fireman, multi-inning, close and late kind of role?
I would say most managers throughout baseball, go with that traditional, oh, wow, I put this guy in a closer role, he's lights out. Of course you don't take him out of that position. However, I think Hader is a different animal because of the fact that the way that we use him and weaponize him in the key situations from basically the sixth inning on when, we were honestly facing the heart of the team, our opponent's lineup is when we really utilized him. It really was super effective last year. So with that being said, I do think that Jeremy Jeffers would probably, be maybe not officially named closer, but get most of the closing opportunities so that Hader can be that rover through the 7th to 9th inning and basically come on and put out any type of rallies that were to, start late in the game. And I think that's the role that he was really effective with last year. And I think it's where he can be used the best. With that being said, if that happens to be during the last inning of a game it's a close game too, then he could pick up some saves too. But I think it won't be just anointing Josh Hader as a closer because he's done so well so far. I think it will go back to the same system as last year.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Jeremy Jeffers, guys. I hope I'm wrong. I just think that with this weird injury in spring training and kind of the weird way that it seemed last year that, if you guys remember, he missed game 163 because he had some mystery injury and then did not pitch well in the playoffs against the Dodgers, and his numbers and his rehab outings in the minors have been worrisome as well. I'm a little worried about him. I hope I'm way off on this and that we're laughing about this in a couple of weeks. But at this point, I guess that they'll probably put him back into a closers type role, so to speak. Knowing that Craig Counsell likes to bring in guys for situations, specifically, like you said, Craig. But I for some reason I'm a little more worried about Jeremy Jeffers than maybe folks are talking about, especially our colleagues like Tom Hodgecourt and Adam McCauley maybe downplaying the injury a little bit. I just don't know what to expect out of him.
I personally think that Jeffers is probably going to get eased back into the closer role, sort of the way that, I guess Knebel never quite made it back, I guess. But when he had his injury last year, he was, obviously like we'll say, okay, I'll throw him out there for the 6th. Okay, yeah, he's been dominant. Okay, now you're going to work the 7th and the 8th. So, he obviously just got put in more and more high leverage situations, and I think that's what they're going to do with Jeffers. I mean, I would like to see him, come in and work a clean 6th inning and just kind of work his way.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Scott. They'll probably ease him back into the role, but I hope that he, like I was saying, the quote-unquote good Jeremy Jeffers from last year where he really had some dominant stretches does return and can be that solidifying force as a de facto closer for the Brewers, because I think that's what Corey Knebel was going to be for us this year. And since he's not available, I think Jeffers makes the most sense out of the bullpen that we currently have, just because of his experience and because he's shown whenever he pitches for the Brewers, he does pretty well. However, I was at game 164 last year, which was the opening game of the divisional series against the Colorado Rockies. The Brewers, Christian Yelich had a home run that game, too. We were up 2-0 for most of the game. Woodruff started that game, pitched well, and then what happened was Jeremy Jeffers came in and top of the ninth and gave up 2 runs. Luckily, Mike Moustakas walked us off in the bottom in that classic game. But that really, Jeremy Jeffers was pretty bad throughout the playoffs last year when we really needed him not to be. So I can see, Vince's point of view, too, where you just don't know what we're getting from this guy. I was also tracking a couple of rehab starts in the minor leagues, and he was giving up runs. I think he made like 3 or 4 appearances, and of those appearances, he gave up runs, I think, 2 or 3 of them. So, again, that could be shaking off the rust or whatever, but, you don't want him doing that here in the major league level. I think you're right, Scott. They'll probably just ease him back in and we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, obviously, Josh Hader is being used effectively still, and I think the Brewers obviously are still in first place. And if they just get a little bit better from their starting pitching, it won't put as much pressure on the bullpen overall either. So I think it'll all come together. I think there's definitely a lot of talent up and down throughout our pitching staff. So flipping over to the offensive side, which, there's very little complaints on that side. With that being said, since we got a little time here, so guys, I was going to kind of throw out there our first base platoon of Jesus Aguilar, who had a first breakout season last year after being almost like a career minor leaguer, and Eric Thames, who came back from Korea and was going gangbusters his first couple months as a Brewer, but since then it seems like he's been very slowly going downhill till his contract runs out at the end of this year. And so basically, I think that's almost the one big hole I see in our offense right now. Do you have concerns with either or both of those players going forward?
I mean, a little bit. I think that Jesus' second half was a little concerning to me. He admitted that, very publicly that he got tired, in the second half. So his first half was about as good of a first half as you could hope for from somebody. But yeah, his second half was worrisome. His start this year is worrisome. I still have some faith that he can turn it around. The guy's got a lot of raw power. I think that he is, a good contact hitter for the most part. So I'm not as worried, maybe, Craig, as you might be. But I do think that we should at least be monitoring the situation. I don't know what kind of upgrades are out there at this point. I mean, unless you wanted to switch a guy like Shaw or Moustakas over to that position, and then you maybe call up the Spangenberg or somebody else at that point, and you kind of shuffle the infield around a little bit. But, at this point, I still think our best option is probably to start Jesus, hope that he gets hot and gets back in the groove, and then platoon him with Thames in a very soft platoon at this point of the season.
I think for me personally, I'm a little bit concerned about both of them. I think that Thames is probably the more patient hitter, but I guess overall, they're 2 of the more animated and excitable players on the team, and I'm just worried that maybe that's going to lead to like them being a little bit too aggressive at the plate, start pressing, and they're also 2 of the streakiest players on the team, in my opinion, anyway. And so obviously, if one of these guys gets really hot, I mean, they could turn this whole thing around. But at the same time, like, the longer that a slump goes, the more it gets in people's heads, and it's harder to get out.
Yeah, didn't we got a comment too, Craig, from our anonymous source, Tom Carter, at one point about these guys too, didn't we?
Yeah, TC. He said, just say TC because no one knows who that is. You don't even have to say anonymous. We can just say TC. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah, TC really is concerned. What he said to me is he actually thinks that if Keston you're our number one prospect, second baseman, keeps hitting at AAA, that he could be brought up, and what would happen is Moustakas would go over to third, and Shaw would come over to first base and basically do more of a heart platoon, meaning he would get all starts against right-handers, and Aguilar would get starts against lefties only, and Zanes would basically just be a depth piece. And to me, that actually made a lot of sense. I mean, Pusey's always got a lot of good information. I thought that actually was a great plan for possibly for the second half, if there's still this trend of between those guys are an issue. So I really think that's some nice flexibility. But with all that being said, I think Jesus Aguilar will come around, and I think he'll be a solid. His numbers will end up being solid. It probably might not be the same as last year overall by the end of the year, but I think he's a pretty solid hitter overall, and I think he'll come around and hopefully get on a hot streak, like Scott says, and improve his numbers. But for right now, they've just not gotten out to a great start. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, Keston Hiura right now is striking out at about a 45% clip. Obviously, it's very early, but I think it was like around, I want to say about 40 at bats. So not a heck of a lot, but at the same time, not the start that he was hoping for. But yeah, that definitely seems like a good backup plan.
Well, I think he has like 4 home runs and a really good average and OPS, so Scott. So obviously, you'd like to see him not strike out as much, but it's his first taste at AAA. So we'll see. Obviously, the Brewers will be looking to acquire players as the summer goes on, too. So you never know, but I really think that we have enough depth to get through with the team and what we have in the players that we have in the high minors as well. So we'll see.
Craig, Scott got those stats from his interns, though, so those are spot on.
I guess I don't trust his interns as much as you do. But that's fine.
I think I actually just saw it on Twitter. So no, the interns have been 100% useless, but they're going to edit this taping, though. I'm sure they're going to do a great job. So
it'll be great. Yeah, no problems at all.
Absolutely. So let's go over our predictions for this week. I feel that we're going to win at least one of the games against the Cardinals in that series. So we have 3-game homestand against the Cardinals, followed by a 4-game set against the Los Angeles Dodgers, 2 teams that we really need to beat, in my opinion. So hopefully we have a great week. I will predict the Brewers will go 4-3 on the week.
Yeah, I agree, Craig. Let's say 4-3. I think that Christian Yelich is going to have a great series against the Cardinals. I'm going to go so far out to predict he's going to hit at least 3 home runs against St. Louis in that series.
Wow, how boring. I'm going to agree with 4-3.
Yeah, well, hopefully it goes better than that. But I know that, we'll see. We'll probably get Kershaw once in that series, and it'll probably be a little rusty still. And even overall, I think that, and Ryu, I think, is still on the shelf, so I think we're catching the batters at an okay time. They've got some injuries, and Walker Buehler's been pretty bad out of the start here, so maybe this is a good time catching them. And, yeah, the Cardinals themselves still have some bullpen issues, and obviously Goldsmith's really good, but even though I hated looking at the schedule at the end of the year, that's all these tough teams, that the Brewers can go through this stretch through the middle of May and still be in first place. I think we're going to have a great rest of the season.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, unless you guys have anything else for this episode, or I think that's just what will wrap her up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody who's followed us on Twitter. We're up to almost 600 followers, actually. So continue to follow us on Twitter. It's Brew Crew Review 1 at Twitter. And continue to send us your questions. We will get them on our next podcast, Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. So thanks for everybody who follows us, interacts with us on Twitter. I know that Scott, our social media team, and our interns are really enjoying the interactions on a daily basis.
Yeah, our interns don't even know how to log into our Facebook page, so I have to make another one, I guess. I don't know.
Boy.
Yeah, no, they're just a train wreck. They look like the Colorado Rockies right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's not looking good. Not looking good. That was a good run.
Yep.
Yep. All right, big homestand coming up. Hopefully you guys get out to Miller Park this week, and we'll see you later in the week. In the meantime, go Brewers.
Yeah, go Brewers, guys. Stay classy, Wisconsin.
Go Brewers.
Dun, 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 dun.